All right, it is time for my first 2023 TBR video. I usually have two. One at the beginning of the year where I check in on my Reddit bingo board, be like, okay, what do I need to finish by the end of March? So focusing the first quarter of the year, what do I need to get done? And then I have a different challenge TBR video normally where the new Reddit bingo gets announced, and then I get very excited, which is fun because it's also like a little mini reset, a third of the way or fourth of the way. That's how math works, like in April, to figure out what are things I want to read. So this one we're going to go through that, but also I said in my goals video I wanted to read a book from every country in South America that I haven't already read from, and so I have a TBR for that as well that we're going to go through, and that's going to be this video. I did attempt to know more about these books than normal for you guys. We'll see. I wrote notes down. We'll see if this pans out. But first, this is the current state of the Reddit bingo. I'm doing very well. I only have 3 books left that I need, and I own all 3 of them in physical copies. So I'm going to grab those from my little stack, and we're going to talk about them. The first one is like the well, there's no order. The first one that I'm holding in my hand right now is the runner-up category, and the hard mode is that it had to be the runner-up for an award that wasn't like the Hugo, I think. And so I have on my shelves been wanting to read. It's been on many TBRs, so I feel like I really just need to power through, either read this thing, read half of it, I don't know, I need to pick it up, I just haven't yet. And that's Brown Girl in the Ring by Nayla Hopkinson. This is her debut. I really liked Midnight Robber. I mean, it was challenging in all sorts of ways, not only in content, but in narrative framework, but I really, really like her brain. And this, I believe, takes place, if not in Toronto, then a Toronto-inspired city. In the future, all the rich have left this city, so it's a bunch of poor people who still live here trying to survive on what exists, because it's kind of, I think, I don't know if it's post-apocalyptic or dystopian, but things aren't going great, and now the rich need to harvest bodies, and our main character needs to survive. And so not only does it have this like kind of sci-fi dystopian vibe from what I'm reading on the back, it also has this character interacting with her family roots and the magic associated with that. And I don't know what that's gonna mean. I honestly feel like the back of the book is probably not that helpful if Midnight Robber was any indicator. But I've been wanting to read this for a while. I really love this cover. I have this, I don't know if it's the same artist, but similar cover design for Midnight Robber behind me. And so I've just been really wanting to read it. And Nayla Hopkinson is like another sci-fi speculative author classic that I've been wanting to read more of. Like, this is a 1998 book. So yeah. Continuing on, I have a Mental Health Square, which I think the hard mode was like super easy. It was just like, can't be a Stormlight Archive book, which like... I don't know, I just feel like a lot of books talk about mental health these days, but I have no clue. But this is going to be Freshwater by Koiki Mezi, a new acquisition on my shelf. I've been wanting to read this one for years as well, but this is my first time owning it, so I feel like it's way more likely to happen now because it's like in my face. And what I know is we have Ada, and she's from Nigeria, and ever since she was a kid, she's kind of had a war of personalities within her, and when she goes to school in America, something happens traumatic that triggers a change, and these personalities become this like controlling protective force potentially. That's all I really know. I know that this is honestly really close to the author and contains a lot of trauma and content warnings and stuff, so I need to make sure I go into it in a good headspace, but I'm ready. I loved Pet by Koiki Mezi, so I want to read more. I have 2 other books by them on my shelf, so just really want to get to it. And then the third square is, I think, set in Africa, and the hard mode was an author from Africa, and so I have Half a Lion. This is a book I've had on Kindle for a while, but Deshauna sent me her copy, if you saw my last Friday reads, and this author is from, I always forget, I'm pretty sure it's Cameroon, and so, yeah, it's Cameroon, and this is kind of your classic political tensions fantasy, but truly set in Africa. So we have this really brutal land and brutal kingdom, and the chief has just died, and so now we have a bunch of other people vying to get that spot in power, but it's also your classic multi-POV fantasy, at least when I read the back of the book, and it's like, and you have this young character trying to accomplish this goal, and you have this thief, and you know, you have this disowned prince, so it has a lot of the trappings of a, like, high-stakes, high-epic fantasy book with, like, big drama and politics. So I'm hoping it'll be a writing style that works well for me, because that type of classic fantasy set in settings I haven't been in before can be really fun for me, because it's based a lot about how the tribes kind of function in this part of Africa in Cameroon. At least I think that's the heavy inspiration. So I'm hopeful. We'll see. It's self-published too, and I'm always trying to at least read more of those. I'm really bad at it because they aren't always, I mean, my bookstore, I'm lucky. They do actually publish self-pub books more often than not at my local store, but I'm just like, always good to get another one of the TBR is really the moral of the story. So now we will get into my TBR for the other countries. And this is 10 books because I had 10 countries left, which is kind of why I wanted to do this challenge because it's just like, I can do that. I can do that. Starting with Colombia. And this one I'm actually taking the recommendation of someone on one of my Latin American recommendation videos where they're like, if you want to start with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, instead of doing 100 Years of Solitude, which intimidates me for many, many reasons, I'm going to start with his short story collection. I believe in English it's called Strange Pilgrims. I think it's called like 12 Pilgrims or something in Spanish, but it's called Strange Pilgrims, and it has 12 stories, I think, of different individuals, which is like one of my favorite ways to like frame a short story collection. I know he tends to be like he's like kind of the father of magical realism. Maybe not the person, but like when people are like, what's an example of magical realism? Here's 100 Years of Solitude, right? Like that's typically the trajectory. So I know that's the type of genre we're going to get here. And he's a classic. I've just been wanting to read from him. But 100 Years of Solitude is so intimidating to me, like up there with like Dickens. Like I just like, there's a block. So I'm hoping entering with short stories will be a good place. Next up I have from Peru. Ryan actually read this and this is why we have it in the house, but we have Mona. I don't actually know how to say her last name, but it's Paula Olozarak. I'm not positive, but this is definitely literary fiction. At least from what I can tell, we have kind of, sort of, on the edge of her ropes writer in California, and she's been taking part in a lot of vices, and then she's, I think, in a competition, a writing competition of some sort, and so she can go to Sweden, and she decides, you know, I need a change of pace. I'm definitely not vibing with where my life's at right now, so I'm gonna go to this competition place in Sweden, and she's like the only female there. I think she probably is one of the only people from South America there, because she is a Peruvian writer in this story. That is the character. And yeah, it just seems like it's going to be a time that I just need to go in and accept the story for what it is. I don't know much more than that. It's pretty short though. So normally when literary is pretty short, if it wants to be experimental, I'm here for it. I can do that. So yeah, also I just think it's like, I don't know, really interesting cover. Like I don't have a sense of what I'm going to get from this. So that's for Peru. And then Ecuador. I'm really excited about this one. This one's a horror, and I didn't look into the synopsis that much because it's a horror. And I'm like, ooh, this is Jawbone. This is Ecuador. And this is by Monica Ojeda or Ojeda, unsure. But it's a horror story, and it has to do with these two sisters and adolescence. And I don't know. I didn't want to know that much. But look at this cover. I'm pretty sure one of the sisters is probably going to betray the other. And there's definitely this whole, like, one of the sisters, it gave me, like, this is a dumb comparison, but Pretty Little Liars vibes of, like, one of them always makes, like, the bad plots and the scheming, and then things get out of control, right? Things spiral. It goes from being like, oh, look at these fun, quirky ideas, and to, like, this is dangerous. Like, I think that's going to be that type of tension, which I'm here for. So I'm hoping I really like it, and I do think this author has another work being translated soon-ish, so that'd be really cool if, like, I really vibed with this, then I'd have another book I could pick up. The next country will be Bolivia, and I was able, somehow, to find a cyberpunk sci-fi thriller. So I did. I put that on the list, because as we get to the back half of this, genre fiction is way harder to find. But this is Turing's Delirium by Edmundum Paz Solden. And so, like I said, this is like cyberpunk sci-fi thriller. I feel like it's actually like a very classic version of this genre. I don't mind that. I don't read it that often, so I don't think it will feel derivative to me. But everything I read about the synopsis made me feel like, okay, it's this dude who works for this company, and this company is trying to take down the government and corporations, and then he realizes maybe things are even more nefarious than he thought. And it's supposed to be like high stakes and tension, and he's stuck in a web. Like, those are all like the buzzwords that were put on the back of the book. So regardless, it was actually really hard to find a work from Bolivia, and so I was happy when one of the ones I found was sci-fi. The next country is Uruguay, and I actually already started this book, but this is Open Veins of Latin America. I'm really enjoying this. This is a nonfiction that kind of is going through the history of South America and the imperialism and colonialism up to probably the 70s, because that's when this book came out, the 60s or 70s. And I'm really looking forward to that background, and the writing, although at times exhausting to read because it is dense, is very intentional, and it has like an oratory quality that I'm really enjoying. Like, I don't know, when this person is writing and talking to me, feel like I'm listening, even though I'm reading. I don't know if I'm describing that experience very well. But it's an interesting nonfiction experience, and it's something I'm very interested in. So this is my Uruguay, because the author, oh, where's his name? Eduardo Galeano is from Ecuador. And then Paraguay. This one, I don't know if I'm going to like, but it's at least short, and Paraguay was the hardest. This was the hardest country. So if you have a recommendation for an author from Paraguay, let me know. Shout it down in the comments. But this is The Apocalypse According to Benedict and Other Stories. This has three short stories and a novella. It's by Esteban Bedoya. And I think the main novella, so this came out, I think, in 2008, and is about the Pope of the time. And it was predicting, I think, his resignation. I don't know a lot about popes. So that's why I'm, like, apprehensive. Because this is, like, sort of an imagining of a biography novella of the Pope. I don't know what's going to happen with this novella. And there's 3 other stories that I couldn't even find descriptions of when I looked this up, because, like, it's, like, only on Kindle Unlimited and things like that. But it was incredibly hard for me to find something from Paraguay that I was remotely interested in. And so we're going to try this. And hopefully it goes well. But again, if you have recommendations, let me know. So now we have 3 countries left. We'll start with Guyana. So I have 2 for this, because one is not technically a cheat, but it felt like it was sort of a cheat, and I liked the other option I had too. So from Guyana, but lives primarily in Canada and has for most of her life, we have Karen Lowachi, who has War Child, which is on my series to read in 2023. So that felt like good, because it's genre fiction, and I love that, and I've been really wanting to read this book, and I want to bring attention to it because it sounds so good. It's coming of age, military, hard-hitting sci-fi story, and I've been wanting to read it for so long, because I read a short story by this author in Sunspot Jungle, and it was one of the stories that still sticks with me. So, like, and like that one was also about recovering and the PTSD from war. So, like, I just know that they can handle this topic in a way that I find affecting. So yeah, but the other one is a memoir called Black Teacher by Beryl Gilroy. But I believe this is a memoir about this individual, how she got her education, how she became a teacher, the struggles there. And I think it's going to fill in a lot of my, like, knowledge gaps, huge gaping hole knowledge gaps about Guyana. Like, I know a little bit about Guyana, but not a lot, which is why I wanted to keep this on here. And it's a memoir. I like memoirs, and I don't read nearly enough of them, so this is also nice. The next country is French Guyana. So this is a French translation, and it is also a nonfiction, and this is called Memory Traces of the Penal Colony. And so I don't know a lot or anything about French Guyana, so this short nonfiction that's supposed to try to, like, bring us back to, like, understanding what happened in this country in the past seems good, seems revealing. Like, I never thought that it was a penal colony, but it kind of maybe makes sense, and yeah, I think I want to read this. I want to know the context of this nonfiction work. And then the last country, Suriname, this is a Dutch-speaking country in South America, and so I found a book that's by one of the more renowned authors in Suriname, Cynthia Micleod. I don't know how to say things in Dutch, so I'm really sorry if I really butchered that. But this is focusing on 18th century slavery in this country, and it's called The Cost of Sugar, which I think even became a movie. That's how popular this book became. This was another country that was hard for me to find something that I was super interested in. So if you have recommendations for that one or French Guyana, let me know. But that's my attempt at, like, starting this project, and I'm okay with filling in different books for these different countries. Like, none of this is set in stone, but I find for me, if I choose to do a project, if I don't at least do the work of having options to put on TBRs, it's never gonna happen, because especially as I learned putting this list together, and I already kind of knew, I wasn't going to stumble across these books. It's actually really hard to find translated works for different countries, depending on how small they are, especially as I'm learning with Open Veins of Latin America, the literacy and the ability to partake in education that would lead you to be allowed to be a writer instead of just surviving is, like, still a thing we're building from in South America. We're still working out of that hole. And things like that. And then you have to get an American publisher to, like, decide, well, maybe not American, but for me to read it in English, an American or UK publisher presumably has to think, oh yeah, this is worth the money to translate this, and, you know. So there's even another barrier, because there are plenty of works written in Spanish or the other languages, French and Dutch. And I don't have any Portuguese on here because I've already read a fair few from Brazil, but, you know, the other languages of South America. It can just be challenging. I'm just feeling really ready to tackle it and hopefully find, like, if not new favorites, just new experiences to read about, you know, more knowledge to fill in my head, because this is a part of the world that I want to know more about. like desperately. All right, the rambling is done. That is it for this video. If you want to leave an emoji, like you don't have a recommendation, you don't have any comments on any of the books I've said, you just want to let me know you're here, let us do, ooh, I don't know, a lion. We have half a lion, and there's a lion emoji. That seems easy, right? And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.